Hello everyone and welcome to today's What's New with AdExchange training webinar. I'm Asha Balendran, your DoubleClick AdExchange trainer. Today for the training session I have product specialist Alex Nowski on the call and product manager George Levitt, and they'll be walking us through some of the new features that are available in AdExchange this month. So before I walk through today's agenda, just to let you know that you can submit questions to myself, George and Alec via the Q&A panel that's on the left-hand side of your Hangout interface. So if you click that button, it will open up a new interface and you can submit your questions throughout the training session in that space. And we will take all questions at the end of the session. So you can submit them as we're talking and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so to go through today's agenda, we're going to start off with a new SSL verification tool. So we're going to walk through the tool and we're also going to do a live demo of how it works. Then we're going to go through some new reporting that we have available in the AdExchange UI. And then we're going to move on to improved creative debugging. So we're going to show you a tool that you can use to help you resolve creative issues. And then we'll be walking through a new billing and account settings interface that's in the AdExchange UI. And then lastly, we'll be talking through new custom and flexible sizes. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Product Manager George, who will walk us through the SSL verification tool.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks everyone who's joining. The first tool that we're going to talk about today is a verification tool that we just launched last week. It's available for all AdX buyers, so everyone on this call should have access to it. It's our Creative Validator, and if you go to the next page, where we've got screenshots. We'll go to a demo briefly, but essentially the validator is a tool to help everyone meet SSL compliance. So we're moving to 100% SSL ads by the end of June, and we want to make sure that everyone has the tools they need to be able to check whether their creatives are actually SSL compliant. Oftentimes folks have fourth-party calls within their creatives that may or may not be SSL compliant, and it's difficult to determine what those calls are and which ones are not compliant. And so one of the things that we're doing is allowing you to see all of the fourth-party calls in your creative along with an indicator of whether it's SSL compliant or not. And over time we'll be adding additional policy-related functionality to this tool, but for now it's mainly for you to check for SSL compliance. So at a high level, you'll just take a 3-pass snippet, you'll paste it into a text box, click Scan Creative, and then the output you'll see is an indicator of whether the creative is compliant, along with all the fourth-party calls, compliance for each fourth-party call. We'll give you the size of the creative and then also a preview. Important to note that with this initial launch that we got out to everyone last week, this is not functional for video creatives or for creatives that contain Flash. Everything else will work, but we're not supporting video or Flash at this point. We will add those in over the summer. So I think we can go to the next slide. Everyone should have access. If you're within the AdX buy-side UI, in the upper left-hand corner there's a tab called Bidding, and underneath that one of the options you'll see is called Creative Validator. So if you go to that tab, you can follow along as we go through the demo. Use your own creative if you'd like. Keep in mind that all of our ads will be requiring SSL by June 30. At this point, I think we're requiring SSL for 50% of creatives, and we'll bump that up to 100% by the end of the month. So this is very important for everyone to make sure that their creatives are actually SSL compliant. So what Asha's presenting right now is the UI I just described. So in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see bidding, and then underneath that, one of the entries is Creative Validator. There's this text box, and Asha's already pasted in a creative tag here. But if you click Scan Creative, it takes a second to load. and then this is the output you'll get. And then each of those, you can see that this creative is only partially compliant. It contains some calls which are HTTPS, but several which are not HTTPS. And you'll see those yellow triangles which indicate the non-compliant calls, so that you can track down exactly what is in this creative, which is causing you to fail SSL compliance. If you use a tag that contains flash in it, you'll see a blue triangle instead of a yellow triangle, and we'll just flag anything that contains flash. We haven't yet rolled out functionality to be able to tell you whether or not the flash call is SSL compliant, but we'll tell you if it is containing flash. Video tags we're not supporting at this moment. We'll add that support in later on during the summer. Underneath the list of fourth-party calls, you'll see there's an indication of the size. This creative is 162 by 600, and then there's creative preview. For this particular test, we didn't want to show an actual creative with any buyer's creative, so it's a blank ad. But if you were to use this tool with your own creative, you'll see an actual preview of the creative shown here. So it's relatively simple, but aimed at helping everyone achieve SSL compliance. Check it out, and definitely provide us with any feedback. So that was the validator. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about reporting. As most of you know, we have two different UIs, an older UI that's a bit like AdWords, and then a newer UI, which is the AdX-specific UI. And over time, we've been pulling more and more functionality into the AdX-specific UI. Eventually, we're going to deprecate the old AdWords UI for AdX buyers. And so one of the key things that hadn't existed previously was reporting in the AdX UI. With Query Tool, we now have a very robust reporting tool that allows you to do much more than you were able to do previously in the old AdWords style UI. The tool is currently in beta. I think we have about 120 buyers on the beta, and this will go to general availability for all AdX buyers probably mid next week. So mid to late next week, everyone should see this in their AdX buy site account if it's not already in there. The structure of this tool is a little bit different from what you're used to in the AdWords style UI. Instead of seeing reporting broken out at the ad group and campaign level, instead what we allow you to do is define a report from scratch. So you can create your own queries based on exactly what you want to see, and you're no longer tied to reporting at the ad group or campaign level as you have been previously. When you create a query, you can specify a number of different properties. You can specify filters to limit the amount of data that we're using in your query. You can specify dimensions. So we'll see in the next couple of screenshots, but the dimensions you can think of as slices that are applied to the data. So this could be web properties, countries, creative IDs, app names, and you can pick from several different dimensions, and you can run reports that include multiple dimensions. So if you want to see if you want to see reporting for your purchases by country for different app names, you can see that, and then for each combination of app name and country, you'd be able to see reporting data. And you can layer in multiple dimensions. And then finally, we support several different metrics. This is the actual output. Typically, what most folks are interested in are impressions or CPM or cost. I don't see cost on here, but it's another metric that we support. And over the next couple of quarters, we're going to be adding more dimensions and more metrics to what you already see here. So there's a lot of robust functionality. We go to the next slide, where we've got the screenshot. This is what the output will look like when you run a query. Obviously, it's going to differ based on your data and which dimensions and metrics you select. But in this particular query, you'll see that the dimensions are listed on the left-hand side. So it looks like in this creative, in this query, domain and ad size were dimensions, and then metrics are listed to the right of those. So ad impressions, clicks, ad CTR, advertiser cost, CPM. These are all metrics that someone wanted to see in their reporting. So based on which dimensions and which metrics you select, you'll be able to customize your output. And then at the very top, you can see there's a scorecard with some high-level info. And if we go to the next slide, let me show some more information. So when you're constructing your query, so this is actually before you get to the query output that we just saw. This is actually what it looks like to construct a query. The filters are up above; they're off the screen. The report dimensions are listed, so they're in the middle of the screen, and the report metrics are listed at the bottom. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's campaigns, ad group names, creative sizes. You're allowed to basically drag the different metrics, the different dimensions around, and adjust the sequence in which they're nested. So this is what it looks like to create a query. You'll also notice on the top nav, this is labeled as Query Tool in your AdX UI. So for anyone who already has access to this, that's where you go. And then if you want to see what the report's going to look like before you actually run the query, on the button that says Run Report, it's actually a menu you can click and select Preview Report Layout. So before we actually run the query, and sometimes people want to run very large, sophisticated queries with lots of dimensions, lots of metrics. If you just want to see what the layout will look like to check before actually submitting your query, you can see the layout. And if you click on that, it will give you essentially a dummy table, which is the preview that shows the dimensions and metrics that you get as output. And then if you actually want to run the report, close the preview, click Run Report, and then you'll see the actual output that you asked for. So that's Query Tool. It's currently available for about 120 folks who are already on the beta. It will be available to all AdX buyers by about mid-next week. You can use this to run much more detailed, sophisticated reports than what you've had access to previously. And over the summer, we're going to add more dimensions and metrics. So give it a try. And as the screenshot here shows, it's in the top nav on the far right-hand side called Query Tool. Give it a try. We're eager to get your feedback. And if there's specific dimensions or metrics that you don't see that you'd like, please let us know because we want to get that feedback. The next tool on our list is Creative Explorer. So this is a debugging tool to help investigate issues with specific creatives. It is currently in beta for, I'm not sure the exact number of accounts, probably about 70 or 80. But it'll be launched general availability for all AdX buyers this week. So if you don't have access to it right now, you'll have access to it today or tomorrow. Within the upper left-hand corner of your UI, you'll see that bidding tab that we spoke about previously. Instead of clicking on Creative Validator, you can click on Creative Explorer, and this will take you to our new UI. Previously, we had a tab here that was just called Creatives that looked similar to this, but was actually quite different on the back end. The old Creatives tab basically gave you a list of all creatives that were associated with your account, but it didn't give you a lot of info on them. This new Creative Explorer tool is built on top of our Buyer REST API. And so if any of you use that API, you know it has a lot of very rich approval status data for each creative within it. It's not easy to get to from our UI. The Creative Explorer tool essentially exposes all of that data, so it's really easy to find all of that rich data that exists within the Creative REST API. When you bid with creatives, or when you submit creatives via our Creatives API, we associate those with your account. And so within the Creative Explorer tool, each row that you see corresponds to a separate creative. And in some cases, if you have a single creative and it has two different representations, so you have an SSL version of it and a non-SSL version of it, even though you might submit these with the same buyer creative ID, AdX internally thinks of these as two separate creatives, and so you'll see them listed as two separate rows. But what you'll see in this tool is a row for every single buyer creative ID. You'll see the buyer creative ID, which is what you have submitted. It's your key for the creative. You'll see click-through URLs, an approval status, serving status, whether or not this creative is eligible to approve, and then you'll see a filtered bid count, which will match what you see in RTV graphs. So within the tool, you can filter for a couple different things. Approval status and creative ID. So if you just want to see all creatives that have been disapproved, you want to debug them and see what was going on, easy to just filter for that and see all of those. If you want to filter for a specific creative ID that you're interested in, we also support that. Either of these is valid, and then your output will filter the table. So one thing that's not shown in this mock, because we just launched it, I think, last week to the tool, is a preview option. So for folks who, it's either in production now or it'll be in production soon. From this table next to the buyer creative ID, you may see a little magnifying glass icon, and when you hover over that, you'll see a creative preview. So from this tool, you can also preview creatives if you'd like to. To get access to all of the rich detail that exists within the Creative REST API, click on the buyer creative ID. So the table itself just gives summary data, the creative ID, the URL, and status. But if you click on that creative ID, you get a modal that pops up that looks like what we're showing right here. And this modal contains a lot of very useful data. You'll obviously see the buyer creative ID, but then you'll also see a bunch of other stuff. Things that were declared by the bidder and some things that were detected automatically by AdX. So agency and declared advertisers are things that the bidder has the option to declare in the bid response. If they were declared, you'll see them here. Detected advertisers is something that AdX does automatically. We look at the creative and try to figure out who the advertiser is, and if we detect an advertiser that we're aware of, we associate with the creative, and you'll be able to see that here automatically. You'll be able to see the snippet HTML. Now, sometimes this HTML is a really long blob of code, and so it takes up a lot of space. In our UI, we didn't want to have a whole paragraph of space to show you the full snippet HTML, but if you actually want to select that HTML, you can click on it 3 times. If you triple click it, I think, it'll select it, and then you can copy the text and then paste it in an editor or anywhere else that you want to. So you have access to the full snippet HTML, even though it looks like it's got cut off a little bit in the UI. We'll show you the ad. We'll show you the serving status, whether it's been approved or not, or in some cases it may not have yet gone through all of our verification checks. You'll see disapproval reasons if it's been disapproved, potentially with some details to help you understand what was going on. You'll see click-through URLs, any that have been declared, any potential corrections. So sometimes we will automatically make corrections to a creative in certain instances if we detect things that were not declared properly. So for instance, Flash, or in certain cases, vendor, we might automatically associate with a creative based on things that we detect. Declared attributes, which are attributes that the bidder declared when submitting the creative. Filtered count reasons. This is actually very useful. There's nothing displayed here for this particular creative, but this matches the reasons shown in RTV breakout. So if you're looking at a specific deal or a specific creative and you're trying to understand why it's not transacting, within RTV breakout we have a section called filtered bids, and this will tell you things that usually explain why your creative didn't enter the auction. So for instance, maybe the inventory required SSL, but you submitted a creative that wasn't SSL compliant. Or the advertiser, the publisher inventory doesn't allow Flash because it's on a mobile device, but you submitted a creative that contains Flash. So in RTV breakout, we give you all of those detailed filter reasons, and in the creative details modal right here, we'll give you those same reasons and the count. So for this particular creative, how many times was it filtered out for each specific reason? So especially if you're debugging a problematic creative, this section is very useful. and you'll see that it matches RTB breakout. We'll also add, it's not in the UI right now, but we're planning to add some deep links between Creative Explorer and RTB breakout, so you can seamlessly move between these two tools as you're debugging. And then finally, we'll show categories. So product categories, which we detect, and then in some cases there are sensitive categories or restricted categories. Things like gambling or alcohol may fall into these buckets. And then vendor technologies. So these are also declared by the bidder. And at some point we might also add detected vendor technologies into this. I don't think it's there right now. This is a lot of rich data. Many folks may not have gotten access to this data because they haven't integrated with our API, but we've essentially put a front end on our API to make it really easy for folks to get access to this data. It comes in very handy when you're troubleshooting a deal or a creative that is problematic. It gives you a lot of very rich data to help figure out what's going on and to explain what AdX is seeing and why it is that AdX may have disapproved or blocked the creative for this particular impression or deal. So that's Creative Explorer. Give it a try. Definitely give us feedback. We're always looking to make this more functional. And then finally, the fourth change that we want to discuss today are some new pages that we're adding to our UI for billing and account settings. Within our, so as I described previously, AdX currently has two UIs, an older UI and a newer UI, and we're moving all of our functionality into our newer UI. Billing and account settings already exist in the older UI, so you already have access to this stuff, but we're just pulling it into the newer UI, so it's in one place in our unified UI, so you don't need to switch back and forth. More accessible and a little bit easier to use. So from your AdX buy-side account, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a gear icon, and if you click on that, you'll see some new options, including billing and account settings. If you click on billing, you'll see that there are some tabs behind that. So invoices, transaction history, billing settings, and billing profile. And these map to pages that you've already had access to in our older UI. So nothing here should be really surprising. So if you click on that billing, you'll wind up in the Invoices tab. And this is pretty much what you'd expect to see. We tell you how much you have due, and we give you some data on historic invoices. We allow you to download your invoices, we give you due dates, invoice amounts, the amount paid, your outstanding balance, basically all of the information you'd expect to see here. There's probably nothing surprising about this. If you keep going, there's a filter called, it's labeled as all invoices by default, but if you click on that, you'll be able to see your older invoices, so open and pass invoices to be filtered, and then we'll just show you the specific invoices corresponding to those. You can check for payments and credits that haven't yet been applied to your account. So if you've submitted payment or credit that may not have yet been applied to your account, you can see that. Under amount due, you'll see a little link that says you have unapplied payments/credits. There's a link that says view. You click on that, you'll get the information that's listed in the table below, where you can see the amount and the unapplied amount. You can view your transaction history. So this is more of a credits and debits visualization. You can see specific dates when there are debits and credits on your account, and how those total up to your current account balance. And then moving on to the next tab, there's a billing settings tab. Gives you some information. Generally, you're not going to be editing this, but if you need to, there's some really basic stuff here, like which users, for instance, get the invoice. So you can specify email addresses for who you want to get invoices. There's another tab called Billing Profile. Again, this matches to what you already have access to in our older UI. It provides similar information around your business address. We have mailing addresses, billing addresses as well, if you want to specify a billing address that differs from the actual address where we mail or email you the invoice. So that's billing. Next, we've got account settings. This is another option. When you click on the gear icon, you'll see an entry called account settings. And for now, this just contains a handful of things. It gives you, tells you who we think you are, your email, your display language, your time zone. But then over the next month, we're going to add some other stuff in here. So you may have previously seen something called deal settings. So if you go to the Marketplace tab and you click on the gear icon, you'll see a deal settings where you can specify the display name that you show up as when we show you to publishers via the Marketplace. And there are a few other settings and deal settings. All of that will be moved into account settings. So over time, you'll see more and more things listed here under account settings, but for the moment, it's sparse. So that's billing and account settings. I think that at this moment we have about 70-ish accounts that are on the beta, and we're going to release this to be generally available for all AdX buyers probably mid-next week, potentially the week after that. But certainly by the end of the month, everyone should have access to all of this within the unified AdX buy-side UI. So that's it from my section. I think I'm going to turn it over to Alec to walk us through some exciting updates with new ad sizes.
Thanks, George. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Kozanski. I'm a product specialist on the Ad Exchange team. And I wanted to spend a few minutes talking through a couple new features that are getting rolled out very shortly for AdX publishers. Those are custom sizes and flexible sizes. And through these new solutions, the publishers will enable new inventory opportunities for our buyers. Okay, so up until today on AdX, our publishers have been limited to working within a set of 39 standard creative sizes. And the same restriction applies to our buyers as well. So when a publisher is looking to monetize their inventory, up until today, they've had to work with one of these 39 sizes. So they've been limited to only choosing one of these standard sizes that we supply, that we provide when they're looking to monetize their inventory. And when buyers are looking to run certain creative sizes through AdX, they've been limited to one of these 39 sizes as well. There are a lot of creative sizes outside of these 39 that we've been supporting that publishers want to use for monetization and that buyers have demand for. Some of these are regional specific. Some are just sizes that we haven't added yet today. So what we want to do through these two new features is to remove these restrictions so that we can make it easier for publishers to use whatever creative size they want to monetize their inventory and allow for buyers to have more access to more inventory opportunities through additional sizes and basically just open up the amount of inventory that they can run for specific sizes. So we can first talk about custom sizes. So, sorry if you go back one more slide, Asha. So for custom sizes, this feature basically allows for a publisher to use whatever size they want to monetize their inventory. So as I said, they're no longer limited to one of the 39 standard sizes that we were supporting. They can go into their seller UI in AdX and specify any dimension, any pixel that they want for a particular ad slot. Once a publisher has specified that custom size for monetization purposes, that is the ad size that will be sent in the bid request to any bidder. That's targeting either all creative sizes or has manually pre-targeted that specific custom size in their via their REST API. As of today, we have around 115 or so publishers that have been enabled for the beta for custom sizes. And from those 115 publishers, we're seeing around 75 million impressions per day for new custom sizes that they've created. And just to give you an example, some of the custom sizes that we're seeing most volume for are things like 200 by 90, 800 by 250, 990 by 50, 120 by 150, 770 by 250, etc. So this will really open up new opportunities for publishers to use whatever size they think will best monetize their inventory and allow for buyers to run creative sizes that they haven't been able to run before due to our size restrictions. Moving on to flexible sizes. So flexible sizes gives the publisher the ability to specify a range of creative sizes that they will accept for a particular ad slot. So for example, if a publisher has a 300 by 600 ad slot, they can now use flexible sizes to specify that they will now allow anywhere between a 120 by 600 to a 300 by 250, up until a 300 by 600 to appear. So they can basically specify whatever range of sizes to appear within that specific slot. So this removes the previous one-to-one limitation between inventory size and creative size. And from the buyer perspective, this will basically open up the amount of inventory where your existing creatives can run. So if you already have 300 by 250, for example, you should expect to see more inventory open up that will allow 300 by 250, as publishers are able to include that as one of these sizes within their range of flexible sizes that they allow for their ad slots. Okay, so how does this work from the buyer perspective? So for custom sizes, the easiest way to become eligible to receive any bid requests for new custom sizes that publishers are creating is to be pre-targeting against all creative sizes. So within your pre-targeting config, if you look within the creative size portion there, you'll see the all creative sizes option. If you're pre-targeting all creative sizes there, then you're automatically eligible to receive bid requests for any new custom size inventory that publishers are creating. If you're not pre-targeting all creative sizes and instead you're pre-targeting individual creative sizes, then you can manually add specific custom sizes to your pre-targeting settings via the REST API. And if you're not currently integrated with the REST API, then you can get in touch with your AdX rep, and they'll be able to help you manually set up the pre-targeting for those custom sizes. For flexible sizes, it works very similarly. So as long as you are pre-targeting all creative sizes, you'll be eligible to receive bid requests for any creative size that the publisher is allowing within their range of flexible creative sizes for a given ad slot. And again, if you are not targeting all creative sizes and instead are targeting specific creative sizes, then you'll be eligible to receive bid requests for any of the matching creative sizes that the publisher has specified within their range on their side. A couple of things I also wanted to point out. So within the bid request, within the bid request for a custom size, that custom size dimension will be specified through the ad size field. So that's where you'll need to look to see what size the publisher is using or requesting for their monetization. If the bid request is for an impression that allows multiple sizes or flexible size inventory, you will see multiple ad width and height dimensions pass through the ad size field. So the bidder will need to actually parse through the list of options provided for the ad size and determine which one will be the best for their advertiser purposes. And once you decide which ad size will be the best fit, you then need to actually declare the ad width and height in the bid response. If you're returning a bid response for an impression that accepts multiple sizes or is for flexible size inventory, and the bidder does not specify the ad size, we will filter that bid out of the auction. So the bid response does have to have the ad size declared for a flexible size impression. Okay, and that was it for custom sizes and flexible sizes from our AdX publishers.
Thanks, Alec, and thanks, George. So before we go through resources, just wanted to mention, if you had any questions on what was presented, then please do submit them in. We've got 3 questions submitted in, so we're going to go through them in a second. I'll just give the rest of you a chance to add any more. So if you wanted to access the Creative Validator, I think there was a question on that actually, you can actually just log in, and if you click the bidding tab on the left-hand navigation, there should be a Creative Validator. Likewise, if you wanted to access Query Tool, if you log in on the top navigation, there should be a button called Query Tool. If you wanted to have a look at our Query Tool reference guide, this gives you some best practices, some sample queries, and some top tips for running queries. So you can access that via the short link there. It's case sensitive. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't completed our e-learning and certification, you can do so via the links there. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at the questions. So we've got a couple on, actually I think they're all on the SSL validator tool. So one of the questions was, I think George mentioned about new formats. So I think video formats. So people are asking whether you have any more information on the dates that they will become available in the SSL validator.
At this point, no, we don't. We're
Okay.
going to add video, but I don't have an exact date. We will also add Flash, but I don't have an exact date. We're already detecting flashes there, but we're not able to detect SSLNS for the Flash. So we're working on those, but we don't have a firm date yet.
Cool. Thanks for that question, Joe. We had a question come in from Hanan. Some vendor scripts that I'm told are SSL compliant have conditional statements to match protocols of parent document. Does the validator take this into account when analyzing creative tags?
I think that the validator is looking from an HTTPS environment. So if the tag will switch between HTTP or HTTPS dynamically based on the environment, it should be working correctly in this environment. So the validator doesn't allow you to choose which environment you're going to use, because when our ads require SSL compliance, they're running from the HTTPS environment, so the validator itself runs from an HTTPS environment. So if your tags are dynamically switching back and forth, they should work correctly with the validator and show with HTTPS if they've been set up to do that in an HTTPS environment.
Okay, great. Thanks, George. I hope that answers it, Hanan. And then we had one last question from Lior. So if I'm reading this correctly, it says, could you set up AdX accounts which are readily for using the SSL validator? So I think he's asking whether it's rolled out to everyone, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so at this point, it's rolled out to everyone. So every account should have access. If you are interested in, so we have had a handful of requests from folks who want to give logins for someone to use Validator, but they don't want necessarily to give all of their employees access to their pre-targeting because pre-targeting is sensitive, and so maybe they want to have different levels of permission access. That is something that we're also working on separately, and we have it running as a beta. So if you want to have your own employees using Validator, but you don't want everyone to have access to pre-targeting, and you want to get added to that beta, talk with your account team, and we can see about getting you set up.
Cool. Thank you, George. Thanks for that question, Lior. Okay, so I'll just pause for an extra 10 seconds if anyone wants to ask any more questions before we wrap up today's session. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's Hangout on Air training session. The video will be the recording if you missed anything or wanted to go back to anything, or if your colleagues didn't get a chance to join today, the recording will be uploaded to YouTube in a couple of hours, so you can access it via our training page on Google+, the same way you accessed this training. And also there'll be a link to submit feedback. So if you have any feedback on anything that was presented or any of the tools, then the form will be at the bottom of the screen of the video, and you can just click that and submit your feedback. Alternatively, you can access the link via what's presented now, but it is case sensitive and that's a bit laborious to type out. So yeah, just wait for the uploaded video and you can click directly onto there. So thanks everyone for joining today's training session. I hope you found it useful and hope you are getting started with the features that we presented today. So thank you very much to George and Alec for presenting as well.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.